Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. It's been quite a while since I did one of these long-form conversations on here. In fact, I think it was since we were digging into the fundamentals of movement, actually. And now it's tactics season. I'm going to try to do the same thing with tactics that we did with movement, because tactics has long been a case-by-case thing that we don't really have a system for. And because of that, they can get confusing. And I want to explore whether that's what we're stuck with or if there's a better way. And, maybe we can't come up with an assessment like we did for movement, but I do fully believe that we can come up with a better system, some sort of framework to make sure that your tactics are effective and efficient. The fundamentals of tactics and how and when to branch away from those fundamentals. There are no guarantees, of course, but we have to try. And if you want to keep up with that process of trying to build something useful that all of us can use, you can do that by subscribing to my newsletter, The Current, monthly-ish. I'll be telling you what ideas I'm tumbling around in my head, what dots have been connected, and of course, you'll be the first to know when something more robust is available. I also talk through this on a microphone as I'm having these thoughts in real time with the patrons on the We Scream Like Eagles podcast. And you can get those bonus episodes, including 2 extra board meetings every month, for as little as $3. And the links to both of those things are in the show notes. But in trying to explore tactics, we have to start with grades. We just have to, because frankly, they're a pervasive part of this thing that we can't escape. And until we figure out how to have a healthy relationship with them, they're likely to negatively color our experience. And that coloring then affects how we approach our goals and changes how we need to consider strategy and tactics. And I've been exploring grades for a little while now. You may have heard those episodes or watched the YouTube videos. And I've decided that rather than looking at the blurriness of grades as a bug, I'm going to view it as a feature. Grades just are blurry, and they represent a wider range than we want to believe. But to stress test the range that I thought made most sense, I wanted to talk to someone who's an above-average climber with an above-average resume and who spends a considerable amount of time thinking about this subject, and who isn't the height of an average male like I am. And one person really stood out above the others, pun intended there. Juliet Hammer. She's a coach, crusher, has been doing experiments concerning indoor grades and working on a resource for how to engage with grades, and she's just shy of 5 feet tall. That's perfect. And also in the show notes, you'll find links to Juliet on socials and YouTube, as well as the link to her new course, Beyond Grades, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this conversation. You'll also find links to my YouTube playlist of videos about grades, and of course, like I said, links to how you can subscribe to The Current and become a patron. All right, let's get into this exploration of grades with Juliet Hammer.
It's time to build.
I'm excited to talk with you about grades because I'm in my own little bubble here when I'm thinking about grades and, writing about grades and talking about grades. And I am 5'8" with a 5'8" wingspan, so I'm 1 inch shorter than the average, which means most of my grade experiences fit roughly in the middle. And I've been theorizing all these ideas about grades and trying to come up with a better way to look at the grade scale we currently have,
Mm-hmm.
and just a better perspective, a healthier perspective. But I'm right in the middle. So I don't know whether my theories hold up with someone who's quite a bit shorter or quite a bit taller. And you're on the quite a bit shorter side of the spectrum. What is your height and ape index?
So I call myself 5'0", but I'm actually 4'11 and 3/4.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Like I think I would be even more proud to say 4'11 and 3/4, because then it's like, look how hard I climb, even though I'm not even 5 feet tall.
Yeah. I think I don't know where it came from. Probably just from, when I was in grade school or whatever.
Sure.
And taller was always like better or whatever. But yeah, so I'm 4'11 and 3/4, and my wingspan is 5'2", or maybe a little bit actually longer than 5'2".
Like giant. You're like a giant in your wingspan.
Yeah, I have huge. So yeah, I have the positive ape index, which is helpful for sure. But yep, pretty small.
Yeah, and climbing quite hard, and have been for quite a long time. And I think that experience is a necessary thing for this kind of conversation, because you've climbed at all sorts of grades and done lots of those grades. And for me, that means a lot. That I'm not trying to like put down the person who's only done their first V7. That's an incredible accomplishment. They'll go on to do more. But for this conversation, I think having tons of experience at not only the upper grades, the V10, V11, V12 grades, but especially the V7, V6, V8, around that area, means a lot to how do we look at grades? How do grades compare to my size versus how it might feel to someone else? It's such a complicated conversation. So that experience goes a long way.
Yeah. And it's been interesting, because in the last couple of years, I've been trying to dig into sport climbing more. And it's been an interesting experience because I have so much less experience with the grades with sport climbs. It's just it's an interesting contrast, because I do feel like pretty confident in my ability to judge the difficulty of a boulder, but that confidence is not there for the sport climbing. So it's interesting, where I feel like I do kind of lean more on the community or the consensus grade when it comes to sport climbing, because I just don't feel like I have that same experience as I do with boulders. So it's actually, it's been pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We'll have to dig into that a little bit later for sure. Let's start with, is there a difference for you between how off or on grades feel between outdoors and boards, and outdoor bouldering specifically?
Yeah. So as far as my experience goes on the boards, I've spent the most time on the 2016 moon board, because of the gym that I was climbing at in 2016 when the moon board first came out. That was the only board, and
it's been around so long.
That's the only board they had. And so my experience on the boards themselves is primarily on the 2016 moon board. I have a little bit more experience on the kilter board, and then limited experience on the tension board too. But so most of these generalizations are going to be around the 2016 moon board. But kind of historically, even just in the commercial gym, as well as boards, I've always climbed much harder outside than I have indoors. And so as far as just how off grades feel, they definitely it just feels almost like a different scale indoors than it does outdoors. And they're like kind of hard to compare, because they'll be off by, multiple grades.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. So many people are like, indoor grades are so much easier than outdoor grades, and I'm the opposite. Outdoor feels so much easier, so much more intuitive, so much less based around one very specific skill or strength that you might need to do the thing, because you can always leverage your strengths outside, or more often you can leverage your strengths and skills outside. At least that's my theory into why I'm better outside than indoors.
Yeah, I guess too, like maybe there is more of a communal input in outdoor climbs as well. Like if you just are climbing at the gym, it's the one setter or the handful of setters who, slap the difficulty onto the climb. And I guess with the different boards, there are different processes that each board goes through for coming about a grade, but it is just pretty limited versus like an outdoor climb. Maybe people are a little more mindful or put a little bit more thought into like the difficulty of those. And maybe that's part of why they tend to be more accurate, but it's hard to say exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like when I've climbed on boards, which isn't a ton, but when I have, and you have to give a rating in the app or whatever, I'm just kind of, whatever. But outdoors, especially when I'm doing an FA, I spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about what the grade might be, and on boards, I just don't. And I hadn't really connected those dots before until you just said that. But that's interesting. I definitely don't give grades on boards the same respect I do grades outside.
Yeah, and it's something that people brought up in the comments of those YouTube videos I've made of, especially on, I guess Kilter and TB2 use the same app interface, but there's this like quick log feature where you just like swipe and it logs it for you, but you don't necessarily like put in your attempts. You don't put how good you thought the boulder was. You don't put any of those like other input values, and it's just you just swipe and it's logged. And I think that was a really,
for sure.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really good point of just the grades not necessarily having consistency, especially on the boards. Because I do the same with outdoor climbs, where even if something has a slash grade I like, I'm like, let me really think about how I felt about this climb. And to the point where sometimes I think too much about it and it can ruin the entire experience of the climb. But definitely a lot more thought.
Does it seem like indoors or outdoors, or indoors specifically on boards or outdoors, one is more consistent than the other in terms of the grading? Do you find one to be more all over the place, or do they seem roughly the same?
I would say maybe the like overall range is probably the same in terms of like there are definitely V4s outside I can't do, as well as V4s on the moon board that I haven't done. And I guess just as some background, I've climbed up to V12 outside, and I've done over 50 boulders V10 and up at this point. So there's definitely still V4s I can't do. And then there are V8s, V9s that I can flash or do in a couple of tries, and others that like feel impossible. So as far as the range goes, I think they're similar, but maybe just in terms of like where things generally tend to fall, I do feel like the boards feel consistently harder for the grade for me.
What's your theory? Why do you think the boards feel consistently harder to you?
For me, especially as the grades get harder, there's just limited ways to make movement more difficult on a board, because the holds are set. The holds are the holds. They're often, depending on which board you're on, they're not going to be like that bad. And so a natural way to make it more difficult is just to take away holds, make the moves bigger. And there's just not really a way to work around it like there might be outside, where there might be different options to smear or intermediates or things like that. It's just kind of like the holds are the holds. And if they're too far apart, they're too far apart for me.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest gripes about the boards is that they're to get to more difficult climbs and moves. It's so easy to just go, okay, bigger move,
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have the option of smaller hold a lot of the time. So it's like, oh, bigger move. That's the way I go,
Yeah.
And I want to blame it on the person setting the boulder, but the constraints of the board sort of lead you right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I would agree. Especially with a board like the 2016 moon board where it's at a set angle. Because at least with the adjustable boards, you can do the same climb and just make it steeper. And it's not necessarily that the moves are bigger, they're just harder.
right.
But yeah, definitely like as far as setting new climbs at the same angle, the options are limited.
Yeah. If you're giving personal grades, and let's do this for boards and for outdoors, what's the range that you most often see? And I ask this because I've been theorizing that about 1.5 grades in either direction is how I want to view the grade scale. And I don't think it's even that like the grades are blurry because we're not good at giving grades. I think it's a feature of the number. Like that's how I'm thinking of it now. I know it wasn't intended that way, but I don't think we should just keep doing a thing just because that's how we've always done it,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at this as a feature. If I say V7, that means it could be anywhere from hard V5 to easy V9.
Mm-hmm.
It might feel that way to you, whoever you are. But again, I'm 5'8", so I fit right in the middle. What's the spread roughly for you that you regularly see?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty rare for me to upgrade or downgrade anything by more than a number, at least for bouldering again. Yeah, so I feel like the 1.5 grade range is probably fair. But yeah, it's pretty rare for me to upgrade something by 2 numbers or downgrade it by 2 numbers. It's usually within +1 or -1.
When you do find a thing that you upgrade or downgrade, and you know what, I've been thinking about those terms too, upgrade and downgrade. It makes it sound like we're saying this climb is this instead of it felt this way to me, And especially with downgrade having the like strange, super negative connotation as if we're talking about that climber as lesser of a person or something. Those words have been flipping around in my head as not the best words, even though they're the words I have and the words I'm using. But when you are upgrading or downgrading further than a grade or a grade and a half, is it usually an upgrade or usually a downgrade? Or do you even have a feeling for that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have many examples in mind of instances where I upgraded or downgraded, but the one climb that like immediately comes to mind was an upgrade. It's Dragon Lady at Stone
I was
Fort.
thinking about Dragon Lady last night when I was thinking about this conversation. I wanted to specifically ask about Dragon Lady.
Yeah, it's given V4. I call it V4/7. It's if you're short, it felt V7 to me.
I'm surprised it only felt V7, to be honest.
Hard V7, I guess, but yeah, that's the main example that comes to mind. But I can't necessarily think of a climb that I've downgraded by 3 grades. But yeah, it is interesting to like you bringing up the upgrading versus downgrading terminology, because it really does kind of. Yeah, there's so many like politics to it, it feels like.
Yeah, it's very strange that we have this like we accept that grades are this subjective thing. Most of us do anyway. But then when someone downgrades, there's immediate headlines like such and such boulder has been downgraded.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone wants to give a higher grade, people are like, nah, that's not true. It's a weird disconnect in the way that we think about it. And I've seen, even if it was unintentional, and I think in the case that I'm talking about, it was totally unintentional. And I called the person out for it, and they immediately were like, oh yeah, you're totally right. I shouldn't have said it that way. But someone posted, is this the first time a female has downgraded a female? And I'm like, whoa, we're not downgrading people here. First off, no one's saying that this person is saying this person is less, they're just giving their opinion on how this boulder felt. And that's it. But it's funny the way we talk about downgrading and the way it makes us feel,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I was thinking about this because I recently made an Instagram post and was talking about how it's culturally easier to downgrade a climb than it is to upgrade, at least from my experience or my perspective. It's way easier to be like, oh, I thought this was easy, and like people accept that, versus trying to upgrade something. People will come up in arms about inflating grades, or like, just kind of come after you.
Yeah.
And it is just interesting because, and I don't really have experience with this, but maybe you do as being a first ascensionist, but I've definitely talked to multiple first ascensionists who purposefully sandbag grades because they do not want to be downgraded. Like giving it a lower grade, even though they thought it was harder, because of, I guess, the risk of it later being downgraded. And I guess just whatever comes with that, reputation, this or that. I don't know, but
yeah, I've seen a lot of pro climbers just say subtle things in their posts or in interviews that are like, well, I just don't want it to be downgraded, And I'm like, but why? Why does that even matter? Like, it shouldn't. It has nothing to do with you at that point. It's another person's experience on that climb. But I will say, even just this last week, I did a boulder that at first I thought was V8-ish. And then I went back and changed the grade I put on my post to V7-ish after I thought about it more. And for me, it was like, I'm trying to find the middle of that window of 1.5 grades in either direction. And V8 did feel fair to me, but I knew that if I were an inch or probably 2 inches taller, I could have kept the really big foot for the hardest move. And I couldn't do that. So I think for anybody slightly taller than me, it's going to feel considerably easier. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not V8. And then once I did figure out the move, it took a long time to sort it out. Once I did figure it out, I did it pretty quickly. So it's this weird balancing act of, it felt this way to me, or I had like already put this number into my head, even though when I did it, it felt easier. And now I'm second guessing that number. Like, I want to put it out there as V8 because that sounds cooler than V7 for some reason. But then I'm like, I don't want people to be like, oh no, that's V7, or especially V6, So it's a weird psychological phenomenon that goes on when you're trying to attach a grade to something.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, it's fair I guess, leave some buffer room of like understanding that if you're the first one to find a climb and you're finding the holds and you're figuring out the beta, like, it makes sense that your experience of that climb could definitely be more difficult than once you post a video and someone else goes and does it and has all the beta. Like, their experience can definitely be easier. So I understand, like, it makes sense to maybe leave a little bit of buffer room to take that into account. but also it just seems like maybe as a trend, I don't know, I'm generalizing. I don't want to speak for everyone, but just from the people I've talked to, like the fear of getting downgraded is a really large motivator or
It's a real thing.
It's a big factor. Yeah. Cause
Yeah.
there's definitely, multiple climbs that at least here in the South, like we're put up at a lower grade until someone's like bold enough to be like, this is harder and upgrade it. But it's like a real effort or a real push to like upgrade a climb.
Yeah. Well, that brings to mind another question. Like, let's say it was Jimmy putting up these boulders. Jimmy's taller, he's longer. Should Jimmy, as a taller first ascensionist, be giving his own personal grade for the FA, or should he try to say, oh, I'm taller, the average height person is going to find it this difficult, and give it that grade?
I think that as far as first ascensionist or grade confirming ascents, or just even your own experience of it, it's just fair to be honest to whatever your experience of it was, because there's no way to guess how someone else is going to feel on it. And so if in theory, if we were all just honest about our experiences, we would see probably, whatever spread and maybe the bell curve and whatever.
I like the bell curve idea.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that tall climbers most often are finding things easier and shorter climbers are most often finding things harder?
I think it just ends up really depending on that person's individual strengths and weaknesses. We can take Jimmy, for example, and he'll put up a really sandbagged V9, but then maybe one of his V10s that's crimpier, I find easier. And I'm like, this 9 that he called 9 is way harder than this 10 for me. But I think it just, ends up coming down to everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and it's going to come through in grading. And that's just part of us accepting the subjectivity of it and not having them feel like set in stone or objective metrics.
If you find beta for a thing that's widely considered morpho, let's say Dragon Lady, if you found some beta that no one had found that makes it feel V4 for you, do we then say it's not morpho anymore? These are theoretical questions. So.
I mean, if it truly ended up feeling V4, then I suppose so.
I know we can't imagine a world where a Dragon Lady is not morpho because it just is.
Because it just is, yeah.
But
I mean, there's definitely climbs where I've found my own beta, which for me has made it feel the grade. But again, it's like my personal experience where would someone who can use the standard beta, if they were to do my shorty beta, would they also agree that it like fits the grade, or would that be much harder for them? Where the standard beta for me is much harder. So I think it just keeps boiling down to just, your personal experience and just trying to be as honest as you can, like with yourself.
When I was thinking about this conversation and like trying to put myself in your shoes, going out and experiencing climbs, for me, when I find a thing feels harder than the given grade, like especially if it feels considerably harder, I immediately go to, okay, I'm either missing some beta, missing some trick, or I just lack a skill. But it occurs to me that with that height disparity, especially if the person who gave it that grade was on the taller side, like a Jimmy, and you're 4'11 3/4, how can you decide if it's, oh, my height would just make this easier, or I'm missing a skill? Like for me, it gives me a what I think is a clear direction of improvement over time. Like I can, if I find, oh, I'm missing this skill regularly, I know I need to improve that. How do you know when height is also involved?
I think our individual morphology, our individual skill set, our individual physical strengths and weaknesses are always going to play a role. So it's, I guess, for myself, just understanding that, just having that knowledge that the grades are not always going to feel accurate to me can allow me to try and approach the climb without the number in mind as much, and try and just like not worry about that too much. Like, oh, this is V7, so this should feel this difficulty. Like that's just not, even at, average size height, it's just never going to,
Totally.
you don't know, you can never say definitively this is what this climb should feel like, because it could be out of your style. It could be, it requires this certain skill that you don't have, or it could just be a morphological thing. But I think when we put ourselves in boxes of like, this is how this grade quote should feel, that's when we get into trouble and when we get stuck.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that
actually
answers the question, but
yeah, it does. That would actually be an interesting experiment, like to do on a board and outside. Like have a short person, a average person, and a much taller person all climbing the same things and determining for themselves how close they think it is to the given grade, and see how much the height plays into that. If we could even make that determination. Like there's so many factors that go into this. It's so hard to figure it out regardless. And I think you're right in that, like, when I go out to climb on a V7, I do expect a certain amount of difficulty, but within seconds of trying the boulder, I've lost that feeling entirely, and I'm just in this puzzle. And I think that's because there's been such a wide variety of what V7 feels like. Over all the years of doing V7, it's like I don't really know what I'm about to encounter.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's pretty similar to what I would say my experience is. It's like I have a general idea of what V7 typically feels like, but I know it can feel impossibly hard, or I could flash it. Like there's just no way to know until you've been on the climb itself.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of where getting more experience makes, this is going to sound totally elitist to say. I don't know how to say it better though, that getting more experience gives you a better experience. Like, I think the more you've climbed, the easier it is to put grades out of your mind, and not have them affect your climbing experience.
Yeah, I think like, I don't know. Yeah, the best phrasing or like a question I have been asked is, let's say like I go to the gym and there's a V4 to 5 climb, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be V4 to 5. This is how it should feel. I get on it, it feels harder. Now I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at my performance. And the question is like, how do you know how it's supposed to feel if you've never been on it? You just, there's just no way to know. And I think the experience of having that range of experiences on the same grade can kind of help detach from this idea that it's supposed to feel a certain way, because you just don't know.
Totally. I just did the FA of a funny little boulder the other day that I just posted on my Instagram. And it's like, I had the hardest time giving it a grade because I'm like, it's a relatively low angle boulder. but I had a really hard time with it. And if someone told me it was V6 before I ever tried it, or even V7 maybe, I could have said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But in my head, I'm going, this can't even be V5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's low angle, it's got jugs on it. It can't be that hard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one weird move that I'm like, I must just be missing something, but I have no concept of what it should be. It's just a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So these grades mess with our heads. And like you said, eventually, if you let that keep going, it can totally ruin the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I've done it where I just get so fixated on how many points I'm supposed to take. That it's like, did I even enjoy the rock climb? Have I even sat and let myself just be happy that I did this rock climb? Or am I just getting so in my head about how hard it was?
Totally. Well, the boulder I just mentioned is a good example of this that I want to ask you about. When I did it, I had a really low, really good foot. So in my head, I was immediately like, oh, this is morpho because I'm really stretched out when I do this move. But then once I stood at it and objectively looked at it, there are other feet that could be used to make it less stretchy, and intermediates that could be used to make it less stretchy. So maybe it's not actually morpho. And first, do you like the term morpho? That's becoming more and more popular to use. Is it a term you like?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good descriptor.
Yeah,
and at least
I think so too.
Yeah, at least right now, I don't feel like it has a positive or negative connotation. I think it's just a descriptor.
Yeah, as a 4'11" 3/4 human, I see why you say 5 foot, because it's just easier. How often do you find climbs that aren't morpho? Like, isn't almost everything morpho at that size?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it, again, just depends how we define morpho, because at a certain point, everything does change based on your morphology. But I think generally it's skewed towards, if something's morpho, it's big or suits taller folks.
Yeah.
I would say it can really just depend on where I'm climbing. Definitely rock type has a pretty big impact on the movement and the difficulty.
Sure.
So being here in the South with the sandstone, or with the Southern sandstone, it definitely tends to be more morpho, just because there are fewer intermediates, there are fewer foot options. Things are often blank in between the holds, versus when I was living in Colorado, I had a much easier time finding climbs that I didn't have to kind of fight
Sure.
The size of the moves quite as much. So I think it really depends on the rock type, and then just as far as the indoor climbing goes, I'm pretty fortunate to climb at a gym that really is mindful about accessibility and wants every grade to be accessible at different heights. Not that there's never a climb that's reachy, but there are options for finding a V10 in my gym that isn't reachy and is hard because of the size of the holds of the movement. Shout out Synergy.
Yeah, shout out Synergy for sure. I haven't climbed in commercial gyms for quite a while, but I do remember a time where, and I'm curious if you might be part of the catalyst for there being those climbs available in your gym.
Mm-hmm.
Like having a strong, shorter person in the gym used to mean, I don't want to throw setters under the bus here, but used to mean that the setters would set with that person in mind a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I would be climbing in a commercial gym where all of the strong people in the gym were taller, all of the hard problems would be reachy problems, So I'm curious. I wonder if you are part of the catalyst for having hard climbs available that suit a shorter stature.
I think at this gym in particular, we just, for whatever reason, just have a group of small women
Cool.
who climb pretty hard, and there's like a collective of us.
That seems to be a theme in the South.
Yeah, it's just like there's just a lot of us 5'2" and under. And so I think it does kind of force the issue. But it's one of those things too, which I don't know if we'll go down this rabbit hole, but at a certain point, commercial setting is commercial, and you do have to just kind of like keep in mind who your customer base is. And generally speaking, it's going to be the average height male. And so is it, I don't know, not necessarily trying to be exclusive by setting for that population, but at the same time, it does make sense. But I'm glad that I have hard climbs accessible to me.
Totally.
With the setting at the gym. Yeah.
Yeah. And frankly, for a commercial gym, the V2, V3, V4s are probably more important than the V10s anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that's also a piece of it we have to keep in mind. And setting as a whole has gotten way more professionalized and way better since I was a climber in commercial gyms. So I do want to put that out there. I'm not trying to say setters are bad. I don't think that at all.
It's also really hard.
It's very hard. It's very
so
difficult.
Hard. It's hard to be a good route setter. So,
well, I think this kind of discussion is important because what I see happening, like on the comments in YouTube or on Instagram, God forbid Instagram comments.
YouTube can be pretty bad too.
YouTube can be pretty bad. I also run a hip hop channel. With my daughter, and the comments on there are bad.
Oh no! Oh man,
people on there get nasty, way worse than climbers.
Crazy.
But anyway, what I often see in the comments is people who seem to have less experience have an idea that grades mean this always, whatever this is for that person. So I think these kind of discussions are important to have, if nothing else, just to show how complicated talking about grades is, because it always comes back to, but that's just my experience. So I don't really know, like someone else is going to come along and have a totally different experience. They might find it easier. They might find it harder. They might find a different way. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, just for us being coaches, it's important for, I mean, I'm sure you've had experience with this with your clients, but it's just so easy to go down this rabbit hole where focusing so much on grades just really strains a person's relationship with climbing, and it can make it a lot less enjoyable. Totally. And like my mission as a coach is to help people enjoy the sport for longer and of course progress, but it's always hard to see someone in that place, because I've been there too, of just like obsessing over the numbers, and like us as climbers are often drawn to the performance aspect of things, and it's part, it's a good thing because like we have that drive, we have that motivation, but it can easily go off
totally
the other side. And like, of course, grades are what we have, and they have an important role, but if it's the only thing, I don't know. Like I said, I've been in that place, and it just like sucks when you don't like rock climbing.
It sucks. Yeah.
It's like, it's so not fun. And I mean, it's a really good way to burn out and stop rock climbing.
I mean, that's the main reason I went down this like deep dive rabbit hole of talking about grades and trying to say, look, it's a feature of grades that they're blurry. And if we
Mm-hmm.
can accept that not as a bug, but as a feature,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a little easier to look at something that's like, oh, I trained for 12 weeks to go do this V8 and I got there and it felt so much harder than I expected V8 to feel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're disappointed and you feel like you just
Mm-hmm.
wasted 12 weeks and
Mm-hmm.
you're wasting your time on this boulder. But if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it more like, well, grades are blurry, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is more like V9 for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand why it feels so hard.
Mm-hmm. And also
So,
just, yeah, being like, well, what drew you to that climb in the first
right.
place? Are those
Exactly.
are those things still there? Or was the fact that you wanted to climb a V8 and you wanted it to feel easy the main motivator?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's another rabbit hole we could go down. The whole like, well, I've seen online that this one is soft and then I got there and it felt really hard to me. What's that say
Mm-hmm.
about me as a climber? If everyone
Mm-hmm.
else think it's soft and I think it's hard,
Totally. Yeah.
whole nother conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I don't know. And I guess it just does boil down to that conversation of like personal grades versus the communal grades and or like quote consensus grades, because it's something I've been going through, like I said, with the sport climbing end of things. Because I just am like, I just don't know. I just don't have the experience to know. So, for example, there was this 13C I did this fall, and like everyone who's done it and logged it on 8A at least called it soft. And I was like, it felt hard to me, but I guess like, but I don't have a lot of experience at this grade. And so I'm just going to like trust that you all were honest and be like, okay, like soft 13C feels hard for me. Okay. Like now I can kind of adjust my expectations of what maybe a solid 13C feels like, but try not to get too attached to it. But I guess I didn't necessarily take it as like a statement or a narrative about my ability, but just like as information. Like, okay, like other people who do have more experience at this grade thought it was on the lower end of the grade. Okay, that's just like good for me to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we look at it as data instead of an indictment, then it becomes really valuable. I do want to talk about your sport climbing experience just a little bit because I'm curious about it. You've climbed in the red a fair amount, as well as around Chattanooga. Have you climbed in the new much?
I climbed in the new when I was in college, but it's been a long time since I've
more
been
recently,
back there.
it's Red River and Chattanooga area.
Yep. Yeah.
I believe I've only sport climbed in the Chattanooga area a little bit, but I believe in general, the sport routes are also like the boulders, bigger reaches.
Yeah, totally.
How does that color your sport climbing experience, having those two different areas? Because the red has a lot more features, a lot more intermediates, a lot more possible feet everywhere. How does that color your experience?
I think I've had to kind of take just a similar attitude to the sport climbing locally here in Chat, because it is kind of similar to the bouldering in that, like, I know we had a whole conversation a couple years ago about just like where the grade distribution is on this type of rock. And for Chattanooga, it definitely just starts to peter out at the 13 plus range. And so there's just fewer options to choose from. And of the options, a lot of them are morpho. So like at my size, sport climbing in the Chattanooga area, it is very challenging. And in the red, there are just like just the density of that grade. There's just a lot more of them. And so that means there's more to choose from. And that means like there's a better chance I can find one that fits me and that I enjoy working on and things like that. I would say like, probably sport climbing wise, like 5'11" to 5'12", there's like a lot of in Chattanooga, and it's like really good and really fun. But but it's the same like thing. Like I can't look at the grade of a climb and be like, this is how this is going to feel. Like I got on a 510 plus this weekend, and it was so hard. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Like I was just blown away. I was like, man, it just doesn't mean anything.
I've lost it all. I can't climb it all anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was the same. I like had on-sighted a 12A and then got on this 510. And I was like, this feels harder than the 12A. So
Totally.
Yeah, it's the same theme of just, you can have kind of it gives you a rough idea of like what you might be able to expect, but just allowing for that range to be in place.
Yeah. I'm finding out here, like specifically at like Sinks and Wild Iris, that pain tolerance is a big part of having grades feel roughly accurate. And as I get older, my pain tolerance is going down dramatically. And it's like, I did my 100th 513 last year, but there's still 512s I get on. And I'm like, absolutely not. I am not doing this move ever in my life. I'm just abandoning this climb. And that's just the way it is. And I think it's a similar thing when it's like these giant morpho moves. The classic photo of Southern sport climbing is like the tip to tip, undercling to slot move, arm, span completely out. That move is going to be impossible for you.
Yeah. And like, just even this, like, let alone the morpho aspect of it, the style of climbing also tends to be different. And, I mean, yeah, same thing with bouldering, but, like on the sport climbing around Chattanooga tends to be like a very distinct boulder crux.
Right.
Versus in the red, it's more sustained, or like, at least, typically that's what we think of the style is. Like maybe there's boulders, but the hard part is like doing it from the ground and not pumping off. So yeah, different styles can lend themselves to different, I don't know, depending what you're good at, can color your opinion of the difficulty.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's get into your experiments a little bit. I think they're super interesting. In part one, well, first, do you want to set up what you did in your video series so that we can talk about it and people understand? And I'll have links in the show notes everywhere, or the descriptions if this is on YouTube, that you can go watch Juliet's video. So tell me about the experiments.
Yeah, so I just wanted to test the reliability of grades across. In the first video, I did 4 different setups: the kilter board, 2016 moon board, my commercial gym, and then the TB2. And I climbed 5 different V7s across those 4 different setups, and just gave my subjective rating of them. I just did it on a scale of 1 to 10 RPE, how difficult it felt, 1 being super easy, 10 being like barely eked it out. And then kept track of how many tries it took me. And I capped myself at a max of 5 tries for each.
And then you did a second video.
Yeah, I did a second video where I was curious to see if the trends from the first video, if they stayed consistent at the next grade up. So I did the same experiment at 7B. I only did it on the boards though, because it's a lot of rock climbing. And
totally.
I just did the 2016 moon board, kilter board, and TB2, and I did 5 of each, 5 7Bs on each of those, or tried 5 of each. Yeah. I gave myself a little bit I gave myself more tries since it was more difficult, but I kind of took that into account when I was comparing everything.
Why did you choose V7 and V8?
For me, V7 and V8 are grades that I feel pretty comfortable with, but they're still challenging. And I feel like they're at that difficulty where I can still have like a pretty good idea of like, one, being able to get to send the climbs, and then also just like being able to kind of differentiate the difficulty on there. Like I feel like, me being able to differentiate V4 to V5, I probably can't do as accurately.
Right. I recently made a video that posited that V7 is the key to V10, saying basically, once you get a wide range of experience at V7 and you become adaptable at that grade, it's just challenging enough that you're still learning. And if you give yourself the opportunity, or you have the opportunity to do V7 on granite, on sandstone, different angles, different styles, then you become adaptable enough that the ability to do V10 is going to be there if you get that wide range of experience at 7. So that 7 becomes, like you're talking about, it's challenging, but I feel like I could maybe flash it. It might also take me 5 tries, but I'm probably going to get it done in those 5 tries. So I just thought that was an interesting grade choice, the 7 and 8, because that's where I feel most comfortable also.
Yeah. It's just hits that right difficulty level.
Yeah. Well, in part 1, comparing the V7s, the TB2 took the most tries to get all of the V7s done, the 5 V7s done.
Yeah, I actually only did 3 out of the 5 on that one, with the 5 try maximum.
And that was the most failures of any of the boards. And it had the highest RPE. Like TB2 was the hardest board for you. But the 2016 Moon board came in the easiest, and that's the one that everyone's like, the Moon board is so sandbagged. Why do you think that was the result?
Yeah, I think, well, so for one, like I mentioned earlier, I definitely have the most experience on the Moon board, and like with anything else, because it's this set of holds, you get repetitive movements, you kind of get used to the style. So I was definitely,
and it's fewer holds than a lot of the other boards too. So you really get to know the holds well, and the moves between them, like you said, become fairly repetitive. It might be a different foot, but you're still going from this hold to that hold.
Yeah, it's like a familiar learned movement. So definitely, I think the style had a really big impact on it. And I also it was also interesting because there was a great discussion in the comments about the different moon boards, because I've really only climbed on the 2016. That's the only one I have access to, but it seems like within the moon board sets, 2016 is like the easiest moon board, or one of the easier moon boards actually, which was pretty interesting. And yeah, I almost wonder what, like, with the reputation of the moon board being sandbagged, if it comes from it just being like the first board, and like we said, boards just seem to be harder than outdoor climbing. So I wonder if it's just kind of like its reputation precedes it. Because from people who have much more experience on all the different moon board sets, they seem to think that it seems consensus the 2019 moon board is like by far the hardest.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then maybe the 2016 and the 2024 are similar, or something like that. I'd have to go back and read them, but yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that, but I don't keep up with the moon board lore. So
yeah, me neither. But yeah, no, it was interesting. I was like, even within the same, makers, there's not great inconsistency.
Yeah. Well, then this is one of the things I find really fascinating, is that in your second video doing the V8s, the TB2 came out easier actually than the V7s on the TB2. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the style of the 7Bs fit me a lot more. It was a lot kind of like crimpier moves, crimpier holds, less big moves. And one thing I noticed with the V7s is that I think like 3 of the 5 sevens I tried were set by the same person. So it could just be that like their definition, that particular setter's definition of V7 is like not aligned with what my experience is.
Sure.
And I think, I would have to double check, but I think this same setter did set at least a couple of the 7Bs, and their version of 7B felt easier to me. It's just like, it just ends up being my opinion versus this, particular setter's opinion.
Right.
And it's just humans comparing humans. And so like at that point, there's just going to be like a contrast.
Yeah, totally. This is why we need a scientist like you doing more of these types of experiments, even if they're informal, not in a laboratory setting type of study. You're still thinking about a lot of the variables that other people might miss, like the same person set 3 of these things that felt really hard to me.
Mm-hmm.
How do we explain, and maybe we've already answered this, maybe it goes back to just making the moves bigger, but in video 2, the V8s on the moon board was the hardest at V8, but it was your easiest at V7, the 2016 moon board. So it seems like V8 took a massive jump up. When you go back and look at the videos, is it objectively just bigger moves?
At least for a few of them, they were, because 2 of the climbs that I didn't do at the 7B level on the moon board, it was just like a big last move kind of thing. And I think the moon board's pretty notorious for that. Yeah. To where like the first part of the climb felt right in my experience. For the difficulty, it was just this one last move. So I just happened to not be able to do that. And that was the barrier to having the results count towards the overall difficulty rating. And then on another one, it's called a hangboard not required. I just had to use Hamas Beta, and like I had my partner Davis do the same climb, and like for him, the sequence he did, I was like, that looks reasonable.
Right.
But it just, I just had to do it like a way messed up match and whatever. So
yeah, which you probably got shit for. Is that true?
No.
Nobody was like, you can't match.
Man, not on that one, but on my original video, I did get a comment about not being allowed to match. And
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Like, okay.
Well, it seems like at V8, there was a marked difference, even on like the same board for you. Do you find a similar trend outside? Is there a big jump at V8 or a weird difference at V8 for you outside?
I wouldn't say so. I think if you look at like my pyramid or whatever, I've actually done a really similar number of V8s to V7s. So I think the overlap, the 1.5 grade overlap, plays true outside. I think like when it comes to the boards, I think at some point I'm going to do the next step of the experiment. But it's been outdoor climbing season, so I won't sacrifice my outdoor climbing for the sake of YouTube. But I am just curious to see, like, on a more, like, I guess, moderated or systematized tool, it almost doesn't matter how big the jump is, or like it does, but I'm more interested to see if that jump stays consistent throughout the grades.
Right.
Because, like, in theory, in our brains, we want the step from 7 to 8 and 8 to 9 to feel the same.
So on the TB2, V9 is going to be even easier.
Oh my gosh! No, I looked at some of this. I looked at some of the 7B pluses. I like. I don't think it's going to go well on the TB2. I think we're going to be not having a great time.
Oh, we talked about like the quick log feature. And I think we sort of also have that outside. Like I used to be somebody who just took the grade no matter what. Like my take was, I don't have enough experience with grading things to have a clue whether my opinion is right or wrong. So I just take the grade and eventually it will all even out, you know?
Totally.
But when I made a lot of my grade videos, I would get these comments from people like, well, if we, took everyone's opinion, then averaged it out, we would be able to see. I'm not sure that works. I don't believe that we can come to a consensus. And I don't believe that because I think we all are like, we're all experiencing this scale differently. Like V7 means something different to you than it means to me. We don't have an objective way to say this is what V7 should feel like. But also, I don't know if you're familiar with Annie Duke. She used to be a poker player and now works kind of in decision making. And she's done this experiment multiple times with big rooms of people where she's giving talks. She asks the question and the answers are always, sometimes, never. What she finds is that people have different definitions of all three of those words. To some people, always means anything over 80% of the time. Even though to me, always means 100% of the time. Yeah. And some people, never means anything less than 20% of the time. So if we can't even agree on always and never, I can't imagine how we could ever come to an actual consensus. And that consensus is just never going to be fair. Right? So how do you feel about this whole idea that we've held on to forever of consensus grading?
I think it's tricky because, like you said, like the way that we take grades for ourselves is different from other people, whether it's, the person who just will take the guidebook grade no matter what, and it totally just evens out in the wash.
And I'm middle of the road, height, size, so that might work for me. And if we average it all out, that might work for me.
I think it could even work for me too. Like at a certain point, once you've done enough climbs, it evens out. It's fine. It's like, it's whatever. And then the people who like really think on every single ascent they do, and then more likely most of us are somewhere in the middle. Sometimes we're just like, I don't feel like going through the mental drama of figuring out a grade. I'm just going to take the grade and move on. And then sometimes I'm like, I really want to think about this, whatever. And even, within a climb, what stage that climb is at, whether it's only have a handful of ascents, your input is going to matter more than a climb that has 700 ascents.
Right.
And also, who even knows our own behavior in those different situations? We're probably more likely, if something's been done 700 times, we're not going to think about it nearly as much as something that's been done twice. And you're like, okay, like I feel like it's my responsibility to give an honest input because it's going to have more of an impact if I'm one of 3 ascents. So I guess a roundabout way of just saying like, there's no, we wouldn't be able to even agree what consensus means. And we're all choosing grades with our own different methods or values or what responsibilities we feel, or even like we were talking about before, the like upgrading versus downgrading, the politics of it. There's social factors to it. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or I don't know. So there's too many factors to say like, yes, if everyone followed the same methodology for coming to a grade, maybe we could get a consensus, but that's just not realistic. And I think it just comes back to having the experience that you want to have with grades and using other people's opinions as information, but not necessarily a narrative about you or your climbing, not necessarily, you know, their opinion's more valuable than yours. It's just information.
Yep.
And yeah, you would hope everyone is being as honest as they can, but take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things I keep hearing for like, when talking about consensus grading is like, if your opinion matters more if you're experienced in that area, like you understand that area, the grade consistency in that area, because areas are supposed to be consistent. But me, you know, I'm, like I said, I'm average height and size. I think I'm a pretty capable, well-rounded climber. I almost never even find a single boulder to be consistent with itself. Like side by side problems feel wildly different at the same grade. So I'm not even sure that like knowing an area well gives you any more qualification to say this is the grade or this isn't the grade. Because the consistency doesn't seem to be there for me. Do you have that experience, or do things seem consistent for you?
Oh, no. No consistency. No, definitely not. And I think it comes down to kind of that same idea about like the boards of, in theory, if one first ascensionist put all the climbs up on a boulder, you would think that, okay, like it should be consistent, but it totally depends on whether your opinion matches that person.
Totally. Yeah.
Like
this doesn't happen in a vacuum where they put it up and it's objectively true. It has to have other people to engage with it to say whether it's right or not.
Yeah. So like
air quotes,
on the same boulder, there's a steep roof, big poles, and then on the backside is a techie, crimpy vert climb.
Yep.
You have to agree exactly with what that one person thought of both of those climbs. And that's just hard. It's just nearly impossible. Yeah. Unless like you have the exact same morphology, strengths and weaknesses and opinions and whatever. That's the only time it's going to necessarily be consistent. But yeah. But then you add in that now 2 different first ascensionists did the steep climb and the techie vert. It's just going to get even muddier.
Yeah. Do you think we should all be giving personal grades? Or, and again, this is going to sound gatekeepy, but is there a gate where you are better qualified to say, okay, I think it's this grade? I feel like there's a gate for me to be able to say, okay, I think it's this grade or not. I'm not going to put that gate on anyone else, but I don't feel qualified to say the difference between V10 and V11 because I haven't done enough of them to be able to say. Like some of the 11s I've done felt like V9. Some of the 10s I've done felt like V12. So should anyone give their personal grade, or is there a place in our climbing where we should just sit back and be like, okay, it felt like this to me, but I'm not sure I need to tell everyone it felt like this to me?
I feel like the only way a personal grade is personal is if you're writing it down in a journal that like no one sees. But as soon as you log it on 8A or Kaya, or you post it on Instagram, you post it on YouTube, even if you're just going with like the consensus grade, that's a data point that you are sharing with the community. So there's not really, I wouldn't say that, like, I don't think someone should like not log a climb because they don't have experience in the grade. But I don't know. I think.
Should what you log and your personal grade always match?
I personally think yes, but I don't know. People can do what they want. I don't know.
I agree. We should say that first. Everyone can do whatever they want in this realm. But now I'm curious to know your opinion on. You've climbed up to V12, right?
Uh-huh.
What if you did a V12 that you were positive was V13
Oh,
for you.
gosh. Oh.
Would you log it as V13?
Well, no, I mean, that's actually a really good example and question, because it actually is what happened with my first V12. And I had really mixed feelings and was like really torn about it. But I got the second ascent of this climb here in Chattanooga that was put up as V11. And I was projecting it with my partner, Davis, who is very well versed in V11, V12. He's flashed V11. He's climbed up to V14. We were working it, and he was like, "This thing is not V11." And like I did it before him, and he was like, "You should take V12 for it." And I like texted the first ascensionist. I was like, what's kind of the deal? And it was that conversation of like, "Oh yeah, I thought it was V12, but I didn't want to get downgraded, so I called it V11." And so it was like this whole, again, like mental drama of like, well, I've not climbed V12. Is my first V12 going to be an upgrade? That's
Right.
like kind of bold, right? But
Shouldn't be, but
yeah,
it is, right?
yeah, and like
Culturally, it is.
yeah, and yeah. So anyway, I upgraded it as my first V12, and I haven't really thought about it much since. But it was very mental drama at the time. But now, of course, like years later, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. And since then too, like, since then there has been like new morpho beta found, and people are like, definitely the method you did was V12, but like maybe this new method is V11. And who knows? And but anyway, I guess I'll just say that yes, I would upgrade a new grade because I've done it.
Good. I love that.
And in that case, it was me trusting my community around me, who do have more experience in that grade, to ultimately have my own input. I think if I didn't have that encouragement, I would tend to probably be nervous about the consequences of upgrading, because I've just had enough experiences of people on the internet telling me that I don't climb as hard as I do, and that I'm lying about grades and whatever. And it's just,
it's wild to me. I do my Written in Stone history podcast, and in season 1, I went into a deep rabbit hole of Fred Ruling and him claiming the first 515B at a time when 15A didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
And he was completely ostracized from climbing. Like, people were so adamant that he was just a liar, that even though he did the first 14C and 14Ds in France that are now confirmed, he doesn't get the credit he deserves because he got completely ostracized from climbing for giving the wrong grade. That's crazy to me. But it's been happening since the beginning of climbing.
Yeah. And I guess it just speaks to, I guess, our nature as humans, and like how that influences the climbing culture, and then ultimately how us as a population interacts with this system.
Yeah. Do you think there's a way to make grading more fair, more accurate? Or is it totally up to us and our perspectives and how we view grades?
I personally don't have any ideas for how it might change. And as far as like I'm concerned, it doesn't matter to me enough to like, I think like at the end of the day, like for sure, like the top end pros, like it matters a lot more, and they have a lot more pressure to like be accurate and all of that. But like for us at the end of the day, I, have a lot of other factors that drive me to rock climb than grades. And so it's just not a huge, I mean, it's a big part. I'm not going to say it's not important, but it's not the main driver of my climbing experience. And so it's just, it just doesn't matter to me to to like want to come up with like another way to do it. But maybe that's just apathy, or I don't know.
No, I feel that. And I think part of that comes from you've had a ton of experience. You've built this resume that an intelligent person can't question. Obviously, like you just said, people on the internet are going to question things, but an ignorant person might question it, but an actual real human probably isn't going to. I do think it's a scary place for the newer climber who doesn't have tons of experience to like be tangling with grades and what they mean, especially when you're new and you want to improve. Grades are your like guiding light because it's what you have, until you've sort of found yourself in climbing and you find your own motivations. Having gotten to that place, what's your advice for climbers in general? Because I think you have a lot to offer climbers in general, but especially for shorter climbers who are finding grades to be maybe even more wildly all over the place than the average climber finds them.
Yeah. I mean, I think like hopefully overall with, I guess, our cultural narrative and just like who different people listen to, just I would hope that, we can de-emphasize the importance of grades, again, not to get rid of them, but just to have people enjoy the actual climbing part. It is definitely difficult when it feels like this is like the measurement of progress. This is the measurement of success. But like us as coaches, giving people other ways to celebrate their wins or to define progress. There's like just so many different facets of climbing. And there's so many different ways to improve that you can't measure with grades, that I think it's just good for people to be aware of that and not feel like grades are the only way that they can, or the grades are the only thing they can attach themselves to in order to like improve. So I think just, us having conversations like this and then having people be aware that there's more to climbing progress than just the grade that you can climb. And then, as far as shorter climbers go, my fellow shorties, I think the message stays the same. Like our experience on climbs, even more so, it's hard to say what they're going to be based solely on the grade. Looking at the grade of a climb is not going to give us enough information. It's a guide of, okay, this says it's V7, so like roughly this is about what I would be looking for, but let me get on the climb and see if this is actually like the challenge that I'm looking for, if it feels appropriate or not. But it ultimately just comes down to like how your interaction with grades influences your climbing experience. And like I've said, I've been in the place where it was like very obsessive with it, like me wanting to like break into the new grades, climb X grade by X age, rack up this number or whatever. Yep. And it's not to say that you can't have goal grades. That's another thing is, I don't want people to feel like ashamed if like their goal is to break into whatever grade. Yeah. But it's more like that can be like the outcome you're looking for, but there's all these like really cool things that can get you there.
Totally.
Beyond just like obsessing about the number itself.
Yeah, I agree. I know you've got some resources. Tell me about those.
Yeah. So I just finished making a new course. It's called Beyond Grades, where it is just a framework you can use rather than just looking at numbers and grades and metrics. I break climbing down into 5 different key areas that you can kind of tackle one at a time and have them kind of work together and build to improve your climbing in a way that develops the skills that eventually get you to kind of that traditional definition of progress of breaking into the new numbers. Right. But it's like that's just what follows when you put in the work on these skills and areas that will drive progress in the long term and feel more sustainable.
Is that available now? I know you just finished it. You were just working on it. So
yeah, that's available now.
Okay, I'll have that link. I'll have that link in the show notes.
Thank
Good
you.
job getting that thing done and out. I know how that goes.
Yeah.
Well, I for one really appreciate that that's a resource, because there are a lot of people who are struggling with, how do I grapple with these grades and still be happy, still make progress, you know? And what I see a lot of on the internet is just this kind of binary of, you know, I'm only going to talk about grades. Grades are all that matter. And grades aren't important. Grades don't matter. Don't pay attention to grades. And I don't think either one of those places are a good place to be. I think you have to deal with them to some degree, because they're there. They're going to be in every guidebook. You're going to see them constantly. It's better to learn to deal with them and have a healthy relationship with them than to just say, I don't care about grades. I'm going to ignore them, you know, never going to work. So, so I'm glad there are resources out there for those folks.
Yeah. And it could definitely just be like a guiding goal of, let's say you're a V4 climber looking to break into V5, just asking yourself, what does this version of yourself who climbs V5, what do they have?
Totally.
What skills do they have?
Who do I need to become?
Yeah, that you're lacking right now, and working on those underlying things. Again, it's what's ultimately going to get you to that number, but just fixating on the number itself isn't a sustainable way to keep making progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having these like tough to have. We can't really say anything objective because there's nothing objective to be said conversations.
Totally.
I know how much of a struggle they can be and how exhausting they can be to have over and over as a coach. So so thanks for sitting here for an hour and a half and having this conversation with me.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm happy to have them. And I think, like as a coach, I it's something that I really think is important and that I value and that like I want to pass on to my clients. And just overall, like I just want people to enjoy climbing more, and grades can play a role in that, and they can also have the opposite effect. So I just think it's important to be open about these things.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say this just popped in my head. When I first met you in Waco Tanks, in my mind, you were like this mercenary climber because you were such a crusher who in my mind came out of nowhere. That in my mind, you were just this mercenary. Like you just went and crushed. If it had a crimp, you were going to crush it, period. Like, and that's all that there was, you know? So it's cool to see what you've developed into as a coach and as a climber. And I know my take was totally wrong back then. I'm just telling you that was my very short-sighted take. So it's cool to hear you exploring all of this stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's just, I mean, I think it was probably an accurate take of who I was at that point. And it's, it's just cool with climbing and sticking with it and having, just our experience grow and how we kind of develop as people and as climbers throughout the years is pretty cool. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad people have you, Juliet.
Thanks.
All right. First off, thanks to Juliet for doing this. I always love talking with Juliet and seeing what her perspectives are. And like I said before, she was the absolute perfect person for this conversation. So I appreciate that, Juliet. Thank you. Go check out her course. Links to that and her YouTube videos that we talked about are right there in your show notes. Also, my link to my playlist of recent grade exploration videos. And if this topic interests you, or better yet, if it frustrates you because you'd rather just ignore grades, then you might do yourself a favor by diving in a bit and gaining a new perspective. Also in the show notes is that link to subscribe to The Current, where I'll be writing through my thoughts as I explore strategy and tactics over the next several months. And there we can all learn, grow, and excel.
You don't know.
This time, this time.